Todo esto es bioeconomía.
Bioeconomy.
En la Amazonía. Y promoverla nos lleva a un
futuro
con más
qualidade de vida,
Well-being.
calidad de vida,
oportunidades
económicas
Economic opportunities.
y protección de la biodiversidad.
Biodiversity.
conexão,
Innovation.
Convergencia para la bioeconomía en la Panamazonía. Panamazonía en red. Foro de innovación e inversiones en la bioeconomía. Sean bienvenidos.
Welcome everyone.
sejam bem-vindos.
Olá,
Hello.
bom dia, quer dizer, boa
Good
tarde
morning.
a todos e a
Actually,
todas.
good afternoon, everyone.
Bem-vindos e bem-vindas.
Welcome.
Eu sou Marcelo Salazar, da Mazô
I am
Maná,
Marcelo
aqui do Rio
Salazar
Trombetas,
from Mazô Maná. I'm
comunidade
talking from
quilombola
the
de Cachoeira,
Trombetas River, from the
Vale do
Quilombola
Cachoeira.
community of
E
Cachoeira. I'm in
começando
a
agora o
field
último dos painéis,
trip,
né, do
and we're going to start the
Pan-Amazônia
last panel of
Invest,
the
Investimentos
Pan-Amazon
em Bioeconomia,
Network,
né, evento que está sendo
Investments in
promovido pela Rede
Bioeconomy,
Panamazônica de
and
Bioeconomia
this
com
is being
apoio
done by the
do PIC.
Pan-Amazon Network
O
of the
Panamazônia
Bioeconomy with the
Rede busca
support of
fomentar
BID.
conexão,
And
inovação
this
e
is to
convergência
provide
entre atores de
the
diferentes setores,
convergence
buscando
and
promover uma bioeconomia
investment in
sustentável
innovation, trying to get
liderada pela
sustainable
Amazônia, né? Então,
bioeconomy
hoje,
led
no
by the
último dia do
Amazon.
evento,
So
a
today,
gente
in the
traz o
last
tema
day
de
of the event,
integração
we're
e
bringing the
coordenação
topic of
transfronteiriça,
integration and
de
transborder
e entendendo, né,
coordination
essa questão das fronteiras,
and
não só as
understanding
fronteiras
the
entre os países
borders, not
dentro da
only the borders
Amazônia,
between the
como
countries
outras
in the
fronteiras
Pan-Amazon
também,
region, but other borders as well,
como a fronteira, o arco do
such
desmatamento, que
as
gera uma série de
the area of
e apresentando os
deforestation,
painelistas que vieram
and
aqui hoje
introducing our
para
members of
vai
the panel.
debater com a Edith
We're going to
Paredes,
debate
da
with
Organização
Edith
do Tratado
Paredes
da
from
Cooperação
the
Amazônica, TCA, o Pedro
Organização
Henrique
do Tratado de
Mariosa,
Cooperação
diretor da
Amazônica, Pedro
InPACTAS,
Henrique
Incubatora de
Mariosa, the
Negócios
director
e
of
Impacto
InPACTAS, which
Socioambiental
is an
do Alto
incubator
Solimões, e
of
também é professor da Universidade
socioenvironmental
Federal da Amazônia.
factors in Solimões. He's also
Melina
a
Risso, que é diretora de
professor
pesquisas do
of
Instituto
the
Igarapé, e o
university.
Vitarque
Also,
Coelho,
Melina
do
Risso from
Ministério
Instituto
do
Igarapé,
Desenvolvimento
and
Regional.
Vitarque Coelho from the
Então,
Regional
sem
Development
delongas,
and
eu queria
Integration
aproveitar bem o
Ministry.
tempo
So without further ado,
do
and so that we can
debate,
use our time
queria
adequately
deixar aqui
and get into
uma
the
primeira
debate,
pergunta
I
para
would like to leave
Edith.
a first question for
Então,
Edith.
a TCA é
So,
uma
Edith,
organização, né, formada por 8
TCA
países
is an
amazônicos,
organization
como
made up
Bolívia,
of
Brasil,
8
Colômbia,
different
Equador,
countries in the Amazon:
Guyana, Peru,
Bolivia, Brazil,
Suriname,
Colombia, Ecuador,
Venezuela.
Guyana,
São mais de
Peru,
14
Suriname, and
mil
Venezuela.
quilômetros
So it's more
lineares
than
de fronteiras internas da
14,000
Amazônia
linear kilometers
e
of internal borders
território
of the
gigantesco
Amazon.
com inúmeros
It's a
desafios.
huge
E a nossa
territory with
primeira
lots of
questão é de como que a
challenges.
OTCA
And I
tem
think the first
buscado atuar
question is,
nessas regiões de
how does
fronteira,
OTCA
porque
act
essas
on
conexões
these
são
border
estratégicas
regions?
e
And why are
importantes
these
para o
regions so
crescimento
strategic and
bioamazônico, né?
important in
Especialmente
the
ligado ao tema da
bio-Panamazonic
bioeconomia.
context when we talk about bioeconomy?
Gracias, Marcelo. Obrigada.
Thank you,
Buenas tardes a
Marcelo.
todos y todas.
Thank you. Good afternoon,
Es un gusto
everyone.
participar en este
And
espacio.
it is a pleasure to
Creo que
participate
nos
in this
encontraremos
debate.
con ya
And
parceros de la
hopefully we will be
OTCA.
able
Eso es una
to
buena
become
señal
partners
porque
in
estamos
OTCA.
creciendo
That's a
redes,
good
estamos
sign
construyendo
because we're going to
espacios de
build
red.
networks.
Creo que el
And
camino
if
de
we are
trabajar
in
en
this
relación a
network over
tu
here,
pregunta, Marcelo,
I think we're on the
importancia de
way,
trabajar
answering
en
your
temas
questions.
transfronterizos
It's the
precisamente es una
importance
reto,
of
¿no? Es
working
seguir
in
armando
these
este trabajo
transborder
colaborativo,
issues. It's a
de
challenge.
dialogar
We have to
entre
prepare
todos los
collaborative
actores que
work.
están
We
presentes
have
en
to
una
create dialogues
misma
between all of the
territorio.
players
Sin duda son
involved in
temáticas
the
que
same
la historia
territory,
lo
because
demuestra, se han
definitely
venido
some of them
trabajando
are
aisladas,
topics where history
separadamente,
shows
y
us
aún
that
los
they were worked on
resultados no están siendo
individually
percibidos
and the
ni
results are
alcanzados
still
en
not
favor de las
being
poblaciones que la
reached
habitan a la región, así como tampoco el
in
impacto que
favor of
tenemos
the
con el
populations that
bioma
live
como
there.
tal,
So
con el
this is the
sistema
impact that we have with
amazónico.
the bioma
Entonces,
as the
como bien
Amazon
mencionaste,
system.
esta
So
OTCA,
as
la
you
Organización del
said,
Tratado de
in
Cooperación
the
Transfronteriza, ha sido
OTCA,
el
the
único espacio
Organization for the
multilateral
Cooperation
que
of the
para
Amazon, it is the
abordar
only
el
multilateral space
desarrollo
where you can look at the sustainable development of the region in the 3 areas that we know about: social, economic, and environmental, and supporting and conserving the bioma, and also putting life in the middle of all this. Environmental life, the life of the ecosystem, and the life of the people. And there's also the connection of this very important topic inside the OTCA, and it is known as the Economy for Sustainable Development, and it's according to what the countries did when they joined. We're building this. Definitely, we are looking at several challenges, environmental challenges that you've heard about. So we are coming close to a bioma, an ecosystem. We have the point of no return, the famous point. And scientifically, what does this mean? It's not something that we invented. It's not something that someone invented, or it's a direction of one secretariat. No, it's the moment we're going through. With scientific data, we are actually strategically working towards the bioma. So we know that the socioeconomic indicators of the region, there's a study that was done last year, and it showed us that these indicators in all the countries that make up the Amazon, these countries are there, and there are some socioeconomic indexes that are lower in each of the countries in the region as well. So it's a region that was part of the national agendas, but never set as a priority for intervention. And I think we have to continue the socioeconomic development of the region, where each country will contribute their own topics like healthcare, bioeconomy, manipulation of the water, and we are seeing this whole topic about the forests and the fires, and with all of the impacts and the individual work that we do, everything is going to be impacted. So bioeconomy is a topic that if we don't have the weighting of the population in this area, we're not going to be able to ensure the general well-being of the environment, and socially speaking as well. Definitely, it's a region where we have specificities, and we have bioeconomy for the development, sustainable development, and we have our feet on the ground. So we cannot adopt the same models that were adopted in other areas of the world and just copy it. The Amazon has very particular characteristics with regard to environmental indicators, cultural ones, as well as social indicators. And we should take into account that bioeconomy in the Amazon as a system should take into consideration the topic of ancestral knowledge. And as the indigenous populations and the local traditional populations see this as well, because we cannot implement only these value chains with monocultures. And we're not going to say that, but there should be a very important dialogue, just like the one that we're having today, with several different players for this construction. And we cannot forget about the main players, the ones who are in the territories and who know their territory very well, the cultures, the different ways of manipulating this topic commercially, let's call it that. And we call it like this, but there are other ways of approaching this for them. And with all of these challenges, we've been working inside the OTCA to find the role of OTCA, so monitoring this look and the approach of the management of the economy to support the Amazon.
Uau, a gente precisa no tempo aqui.
Wow, you're so precise in the timing.
Vou chamar, né,
So I'm going to call everybody to speak, and then we'll have a round of comments, okay? So we can save a little bit of time at the end. So I'm now going to call Vitarque Coelho from the Ministry of Regional Integration, who is leading the construction of the Bioeconomy Strategic Plan in the area of Alto Solimões in the Amazon and Biorejo. It's a plan, please correct me if I'm wrong, but it focuses on the Brazilian side of the border between Brazil, Colombia, and Peru. And they're trying to encourage a regional innovation ecosystem and bioeconomy. So how has this been working, and why is this border so strategic? I also wanted to add, Vitak, if you could make some comments about if you're looking, it's a little bit of what Egitia said. How are you looking at the integration of the plan, the social aspects, and the appreciation of the social and cultural aspects and ancestral knowledge? Is there any forecast of a connection between products and services that are more palpable with universities and these other aspects in economic development, regionally speaking? That's it. Please go ahead. Thank you, Marcelo. Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you to the organizers of the event. So I have seconds to answer, is that it? 5 minutes, yeah. 5 minutes and 47 seconds. Okay. All right, so in the integration of the work that we do, we're talking about the area of Alto Solimões, and it has a portion of the Amazon forest, and it's a border. So we're talking about the integration and the encouragement of the processes in the border and in the Amazon context when we talk about bioeconomy, because it is an investment that is necessary and it is not aggressive to the environment. It's the opposite. We try and work on conservation of the area and we try to activate potential development that is harmonious and integrated with biodiversity and the natural local environment. So this concern with the environment, it guides this whole program, the cooperation that happens, the resources, and the Federal University of the Amazons. We've already had some positive points, and we're working on innovation. On the Brazilian side, we're also interacting with Peru and Colombia. So there's the process of the impact. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But in 2020, we didn't have this innovation. We didn't have startups. So now in this area of Alto Solimões, we've been receiving resources. This has attracted companies. There's also the construction of a series of companies in the border, so labs, people who are qualified. So it's very dynamic with the resources and involving innovation. And even the BG, there's BG and the OTCA. These are the organizations that we represent, that are represented in the panel. So we have this partnership to build the first innovation ecosystem in the transborder between Brazil, Peru, and Colombia based on the Amazon. It's going to be our first global experience in this sort of thing. It involves 3 countries, Brazil, Peru, and Colombia, and we're talking about climatic changes on a global level. So we're going to carry out these initiatives. We visited Colombia and Peru, and there are many initiatives that are being developed. So now we're doing this in Brazil, and the idea of this merger, which is trinational, it is now trying to optimize the resources. So we have research, everybody has one piece of the research, and then we're going to integrate it all. And we bring and optimize the potential expertise that each country has. So we started this process of innovation. We have companies, technological companies creating an impact. And it's a way of being able to introduce an alternative for the youth in the Amazon. So a way of qualifying, a qualified profession for them, because if this happens, the young people who are going to start their lives, they will remain there. In the Amazon, it's very restrictive. And if they have an opportunity like that to have an innovative business working with technology and things, they're going to migrate to the capitals if they don't have that. And definitely they will do better. They will start, or they would start the mining or illegal work. So the issue of bioeconomics in the local sphere is something that is sustainable, and the youth can help in this effort, and they can live harmoniously. And this is the function of the ministry. And besides that, we also have the investment in infrastructure, which is critical for the development in the area. And it's happening a lot. There are satellites, also the cables that are beginning to be installed, and everything will improve with that. The management, general management, the boats. So there is a bigger perspective. There's a decree that was published about the border, and there was the ministry, and it's strategic in the border. And this strategy involves integration. There are rules about education and healthcare. So it's an environment that we have here in the area of Alto Solimões. So bioeconomy is acting as an engine, a motor that is helping to unlock other structures in the Amazon complex.
Maravilha. Pô, muito obrigado.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you for your words, Vitarki. It was very interesting to hear about your project. It's really a huge challenge. And talking about the innovation ecosystem, I know that this is one of the topics that are discussed quite a lot in the Amazon. So we generate economic alternatives for the new generation that is coming. And the new generation of young people, at least in the regions I work in, I have seen that they have other demands. It's a different level. So most of the territories, their parents fought for the territory itself, and they had this great, outlining of the territories, recognition of the territories, and who's been working in the Amazon for a long time. 10 years ago, it's amateur radio. Nowadays you have internet. Schools were very rare. Now you have schools everywhere. So you have a new generation which is well connected, that has more education than the previous generation, and they're connected with the world. So moving over to the next speaker, and I think this is a great way to start it. I'm going to move on to Pedro Mariosa, who is the director of InPACTAS. It's a business incubator. The Amazon is an incubator, and AMAS as well, which also accelerates business in the Amazon. And the founders are working on this initiative, and it's an ecosystem with an investment that is coming very strongly. So Pedro, could you please tell us about how this incubator came up, how it's acting in the region, and especially how they're dealing with this challenge of the youth? Is it the main people that you have in the incubator, or do you have all types of people? Hello, good afternoon. So yes, It is the reason for it to exist, and everything that we do is for us to be able to, first of all, invert saying that there's in a region, in a triple border region or anywhere else in the Amazon. Marcelo, it's great that you're here. I really like you. Vitarki, my colleague, the last 5 or 6 years fighting Igici. It's a pleasure to hear you. Thank you very much. And if you allow me, I'm going to share my screen to explain, like Vitark explained, the whole, everything that is happening in the whole region. So the investments and the planning, our incubator. I'm just going to ask you, Marcelo, to tell me when there's 1 minute left, because I'm only going to see my screen from now on. Is that okay?
Perfeito, eu te aviso.
Yes, I will let you know. Go ahead. Great. So if you can't see the presentation for any reason, just let me know. So we understand that these young people and all of this movement that is happening, it is a new paradigm. It is still showing some pre-paradigm issues, but in the territory today, it is our development paradigm for the border and for the Amazon as a whole. Why am I saying this? Because we have been through cycles of development in quotation marks in the Amazon. So extraction and exportation, and we have concentrated industrialization in the capitals. And now for the Amazon as a whole, we have to think about these new paradigms. And what is happening is that the macro region is what you see here in the map, and everything that was thought of here was not thought of in an isolated manner. On the right, we have the innovation environments in Amazônia Legal, and we always work on 3 points: science, technology, and innovation. So before the impact, we have to talk about the 3 things that make up the incubator, right? So Provalor is our technological tool in our research, and InPACTAS is innovation, the technological area that attracts the young people. So we have no way of saying, okay, we don't have a way of talking about technology and innovation without it. And the first thing that we do is provide technological capital, then we provide a toolbox for the science to move forward. And the third thing is to extend the territory. To understand how important this is, we have to understand that the incubator, one incubator, just like Mazô, which is an accelerator, it is a method, it is a mechanism to provide momentum. It's not a square, it's not an area, but we have some areas that are extremely important so that they can work in our method. So an innovation area is InPACTAS, that was conceived just like us. The idea came a few years before, but I can guarantee that it's not going to be operational. It wouldn't be operational if the other connections, if the other ends of this environment that I call an innovation ecosystem, if they had not been there, it would have died by itself. So today, when we look at attracting young people, the first thing we do is begin to develop, and now for the most recent numbers, and until 2023 and backwards, this management area of the business, there was 1 scientific initiation project. Now we have 7. And in terms of new perspectives, another 8 scientific initiation projects. And in the Amazon, in the Federal University of the Amazon, we had the first technological initiation. And supporting this process, we have 30 researchers, 15 have master's degrees and PhDs in this triple border area. We have the technological issue that takes the research and produces tools, technological tools with a lot of access. So we have 140,000 researchers registered, and we have a cooperative platform. We have 60 areas of innovation in Brazil, and In terms of Brazil nuts, we have tools that are part of the process. And now we're implementing a module that has artificial intelligence. And everybody who does that, these are the people who have come out, the young researchers of the universities have been doing this. The technological arm that we have today, besides the academic world, the development of the technological products, these are the ones who want to develop their projects to form an impact. In 2023, we had 7 pre-incubated projects that came into the 2024 cycle, and we still have 3 other pre-incubed out of these 7, 3 have gone to incubation. We have just incorporated 3 non-residents. They are people from other places that liked our method and they're applying our method. We also have for these startups in 2 years, 1,120,000 reais, and the incubator was able to capitalize it to keep the researchers more than 400,000 reais. So this is a world of people and organizations that make it happen. And we are made up of people, of young researchers and people, 30 seconds, doing something different. Thank you very much, everyone. And we're here to answer any questions you may have. Sorry, I forgot to say 1 minute. I was going to give you another 30 seconds of time. No, that's fine. That's fine. Is it okay? No, it's fine. I just wanted to say that these numbers, they're not numbers, they're people. And this is the account that NER did, and I used to work there as well. Our colleagues from Mapachi, they appreciate this from the National University of Letícia. They come to Benjamin Constant to be able to teach entrepreneurship to our young people. And today we have in the continent about 50 people involved that could work informally in the micro region of the country. But today are they okay? Not yet, but they have the perspective of developing something to do with technology. That's really great, Pedro. Thank you. And I think for the last intervention here, before we go to the Q&A session, we're going to shift. We're talking about innovation, and in the general context, we're talking about how to generate progress for the Amazon, and we have, the things that interrupt this. We have the borders of the Amazon, also the arch of the deforestation. There's a lot of illegal work going on. So to create a bioeconomy, to compete with illegal mining, illegal work that is being done there and in the Amazon, Melina, I would like you to bring your perspective from the Igarapé Institute about this issue, about the environmental crimes and safety. How do we create an environment and use bioeconomy? Is it possible to use bioeconomy to create or to cope with this criminality? And to what extent? How do you see these challenges crossing the potential that we have with bioeconomy versus the threats that we have, especially with the illegal activities that have captured many of these young people in the cities? And more recently, we have also seen this internalization in the forest, especially of the drugs. At least in the territory that I moved in, it was very rare to see or hear about young people consuming drugs before. Unfortunately, today, this has increased in number. And of course, they have also they have installed, the drug trafficking is installed. There was a massacre in a prison, the second biggest massacre in the story of Brazil. I was there in Altamira and after Carandiru, and it revealed or it made this, the coming of the great criminal factions. And okay, over to you. Hello, thank you, Marcelo. It's a pleasure to be here. I would like to thank the organizers for being part of this very important panel. And I'd like to talk about a topic that is difficult on the one hand, but just answering your question directly, what is the role of bioeconomy? I think the role is central. And to get to this, I'm going to give a step back for us to say what we have looked at. I think the Amazon, the first issue thinking about this biome, we're very used to thinking about each one inside their own country, but deep down we're talking about the Amazon, which is a biome. And definitely it has its own way of working. And I think everybody was already saying, okay, we cannot input solutions from other regions in the Amazon because there's a great interdependence. So we are in a moment of climatic emergencies. We started talking about this. It's a point of no return. We're all on this bus. And what is the impact that this has, not only for the Amazon, for our regions, for climatic regulation of the region itself, and our agriculture and livestock here in Brazil, and also globally. So nobody's discussing this. I think everybody is absolutely convinced about the importance, the central importance that the Amazon has. But when we start looking at what has happened, the economies that move forward, and I think Edici also talked about the vulnerability of this region when we compare with the rest of the countries. So the first question is basically to understand that definitely we need to bring development to the Amazon, but we also need to change the paradigm. We have to change the perspective that we have established there. So what kind of development are we talking about? It's sustainable development together with a standing forest. And I'm talking about the initiative that Pedro showed us. And also Vitarki showed us the structure for it. But if on the one hand, we're talking about this dimension, this climatic dimension, the dimension of the biodiversity that does not recognize borders. In practice, on the ground, we have a reality that is divided into countries. So even if this whole dynamic, there's no border when we move to the dimension of the climate, to the dimension of the basins and etc., the reality is that we govern according to administrative divisions. And these administrative divisions, they place a series of challenges when we think about a bioma of the Amazon and when we think about a region, a transborder region. And I give you a concrete example because it's in the normative gaps, in the normative gaps that we see, the gaps for criminals activity. And I remember when we were talking about the triple border, I was interviewing the authorities that were monitoring fishing. And they said, okay, we have a challenge that is the period of the different sorts of fish. For example, pirarucu, it's different between Colombia, Peru, and Brazil. So in practice, when we learned about the process, the fishing process, and we said, okay, it's illegal, but people said, oh, but I went fishing in Colombia. And in Colombia, it's not wasn't the same moment. So this divergence, this lack of harmonization, it brings a series of challenges to treat this reality. And then we started here in Igarapé to do research and comparing it so that we would be able to learn what was happening in each of the different sides. So this would not make an impact in the development or the possibility of advancing. So for example, if we look at a chain that has pressured a lot of violence, pollution, degradation, and the indigenous population, something which is mining, the illegal gold mining that is present in the Amazon. So if we look at how this chain is controlled in each of the different countries, we find differences that are very deep. So for example, in Peru, the concentration was on exploration, but the selling of the gold has absolutely no control. So when we look, for example, at the regulation of Brazil with regard to the selling of the gold, we see a migration of the gold navigating through other countries. Or when we have an operation, for example, on the Brazilian side, we look at this process and we see how it escapes to other places. Like, for example, the operation in the Yanomami territory, just like we have over here for Venezuela as well as for the Guyana. So in this sense, I'm very happy that Edith is here. It is very important to have the OTCA. We need to have a vision of the Pan-Amazon region that is coherent, effective, and for us to be able to develop the characteristics to be able to encourage and allow the blossoming of this bioeconomy that Pedro as well as Vitarki have shown us, and then this articulation at the political level that is absolutely central for us to change the game of what's happening in the Amazon. So we have a huge potential, and if we don't have new alternatives, new economic alternatives, we're not going to be able to cope with the criminality that has grown inside the Amazon region. So this is a central message that I'm leaving for us to move forward.
Maravilha.
Great.
Bom, acho que
Well, I
muito
think,
obrigado, Melina, e muito
thank you
obrigado a todos os
very much,
panelistas
Melina. Thank you
pelas
to all the
intervenções.
members of the panel for their
Gostaria de
interventions.
abrir aqui
And
para a
I would
gente
like to
fazer, de
open
repente,
for
algumas
us
questões
to
cruzadas e
maybe
a gente
ask
fazer
some
ou outro
crossed
comentário aí
questions,
sobre as
right? So I
intervenções,
made some
para a
comments
gente dar
between
oportunidade
the
para
presentations,
os
but
panelistas
maybe
fazerem
give
questões
you
uns aos
panelists the
outros. Só
chance
vou
of
pedir para a
asking
gente ser
questions to each
conciso
other.
na
I'm just going to
questão
ask you
e
to
na
be very
resposta. Então,
concise in the
vamos combinar
question
aqui
and
um
the
modo
answer.
de
So we can
cada um
have
fazer a
maybe
questão
1 minute for the
e se quiser
question,
direcionar já para outro
and if
painelista
you
que
want to
queira
direct
responder,
it to
se
another
limitar aí
member of
aos
the
2
panel,
minutos
whoever is going to
de
answer,
respostas,
please
e queria também
answer in
convidar
2
o público
minutes.
que está
And I'd also
assistindo a
like to
gente
invite
para
the
colocar as
audience
questões aí no
who is
chat
with
do
us
YouTube,
to put questions in the YouTube
e as
chat.
questões chegando a gente
And
pergunta
as soon
para
as the
todo mundo.
questions come in, we're going
Pode
to
ser
ask
assim?
them
Alguém
to
tem alguma
everyone
questão?
here. So does anybody have any question here? I have a question. I would like to ask Pedro. Sorry, Pedro. I wanted to ask you about this incubator. So how much you have received from other countries and how regional it is, how many researchers do you have from Peru and Colombia who are there in the border and participating in these initiatives?
Rapidinho, aí eu vou tentar ser rápido para evitar que também
So I'm going to try
falar
and be very quick.
outros ambientes. Eu acho
When
que
we talk about the other environments,
tem outros pesquisadores também.
there
Na
are
InPACTAS,
other
como a
researchers
gente
as
parece,
well.
de
In
estrangeiros, a gente tem
InPACTAS,
uma
incredible as it
moção
may seem,
que se
we have people from
interessou pela
Mozambique,
pela nossa proposta.
Mozambique, and they were interested in our
Entre as
proposal and they
pessoas que fazem
participate.
parte
Among the
desses
people who are
startups, nós
part of
temos
these
colombianos
startups,
e
we
peruanos.
have
É a
Colombians
menor
and
parte
Peruvians. So it's a minority, right?
Na relação dos
Less than a third.
pesquisadores,
With regard
como
to
a
the
gente ainda é muito
researchers,
incipiente, são
since
18
we're
pacientes sensíveis,
starting,
são 18
we have
pessoas mais
18,
né? São 18 pesquisadores.
it's
Nós
18
temos
researchers.
contribuições de
So we
colegas
have
muito
contributions
pontualmente
from
que não
colleagues once in a
vão ser
while,
sistemicamente,
and
não é
it's
processo
not
planejado
systemic.
de
It's
inclusão.
not a planned
Pode ser
process, an
sim
inclusion
tratado
process.
talvez por outras
So
pessoas.
it could be a
Para
bottleneck, and when we ask for help,
a gente tem a colega da
and
Colômbia, com
so we
certeza,
have colleagues from
Marcelo,
Colombia that I talked
que ela
about,
faz um esforço muito
and
grande
she
de
makes a
integração,
huge
e tem
effort
pessoal
to
do Instituto
integrate.
Ramon
And
Castilho
there's the
que
people with
participou
the
na
Ramon
organização
Castilla
para
Institute
Peru,
who
Franja,
participated in the organization, which
ajudar na
this is from
participação.
Peru, and they
É
helped
como se fosse o
in the
nosso
participation.
evento de
And
chamamento
it's
de
almost
talento,
like
de
our
pós-desenvolvimento.
event that
Então,
calls
eles
the ideas
trouxeram
coming
do
from
curso de
youth.
enfermagem e
So
agrárias
they brought
também,
people
né? Nesse
from
grupo
the
pontuais aí.
nursing area and the agricultural area. Ideas.
Marcelo,
We can't hear you, Marcelo. Marcelo, your mic is off.
Travou meu microfone. Não, Edith,
Sorry about my
Moderadora, né?
microphone. So Egichi, you have
Essa
a raised
pergunta,
hand.
Sí,
Do you have a
sí,
question for
gracias.
anybody? Yes,
Tomando
thank
en
you.
consideración que es uno
So
de los
taking
grandes
into
desafíos, como
consideration
mencionaba Melina, con el
that
tema de
it's one of the
seguridad
great
en la región,
challenges
que
that
es
was
una de
mentioned
las,
by
de las
Melina, it's the
temáticas
safety in this region of the
no se
Amazon.
puede trabajar
And
en grupo,
it is one of the topics, one of the issues
Con
that you
esa
cannot
realidad,
work
que
on
es una realidad
unless
que
we all
hemos
work on it
tocado
all
con el
together.
presidente
Always
Melina,
considering
no
this reality
podemos,
that we've already talked about,
con el mandato de la
that
no podemos ni
even in the
ni
OTCA
decir
mandate,
no está
can
pasando
we
nada, que se va a
not
preguntar a la
work on
gente
it?
que
We
ya
cannot
puede.
say that it's not
Ustedes
happening
ya tienen estas
and, you know, just
intervenciones en
pretend
los
it's not there.
territorios
So,
concretos,
Pedro, you already have these interventions in the territories, these
abordan
concrete
una realidad
projects.
que para
How
todos
do
los
you
que estamos
approach this reality
viviendo en esta zona,
in terms
tenemos
of
que
all of
tomarlo
us who are
en cuenta.
intervening in the
En
region?
base a
So
eso
we
también
have to take this
construir
into
los técnicos
consideration,
de conservación.
always basing ourselves so that we can create new alternatives.
Sí. ¿Puedo hablar en portugués, español, edite?
Yes, can I speak in Portuguese?
Con certeza.
What language? Yeah, you can speak in Portuguese. So I don't know if Pedro Mariosa remembers, but we had our first event in 2021, 2022, I think. It was right after the pandemic, and we were talking about this situation of the companies, and it was full of young people in the environment. And I said, you know, you are going to install this incubator, you're going to install this company. And then the young people left and they were upset. They were sort of sad. And I said, okay, so in the federal area of the Amazon, did I say something wrong? Because, you know, they said they don't agree, they don't believe in what I was saying, they didn't believe what I was saying, they didn't believe the bioeconomy. And I said, okay, then in 2025, we have the commander of InPACTA in the region, and there's support. And we got to the first million. There was a local startup that reached its first million, and working with the designing of the indigenous ethnicities in the region. So the important thing is to believe in the potential of the young people and the territory and not give up, because anything you do in you know, anywhere in Brazil, in the Amazon, it's more difficult, it's more complex, you don't have an easy structure to, you know, we spend the whole day. And what do you have, you know, the good things you have at this point? So we have a situation that is reversible, even if some people want to put some smoke to make it not very clear, you know, that there's the climate change and everything, and this is affecting the people and the territories. So this is a good moment to have sustainable processes and products. And it's also good because the public opinion is favorable to this sort of development. We need a little more effort to be able to strengthen the Amazon economy. And there's the scale, right? So Marcelo knows the difficulties to gain scale, and they investigated the scale that we were used to having. And we're going to have to change this view. So we have to have a diversification of products in the Amazon and discoveries, and definitely, you know, what we have in the Amazon, cupuaçu, açaí, cocoa, the Brazil nuts. But look at the size of the territory, and we have, you know, so many new things that we could work with, and so much employment that could be generated from that. So that was the best way that I found to answer you.
Maravilha. Bom, queria fazer comentário também e uma.
Great. I wanted to make a comment and ask a question as well. I think, Melina, I'm going to talk a little bit with you about bioeconomy versus criminality, taking advantage of the fact that you're here. But if the others want to comment, I think it's also very important. But One thing that we observe is that the funding structure of the illegal activities, it's very agile. There's a lot of capital involved. It's very efficient. And the funding structure for investments in bioeconomy, at least up to now, it's extremely complex, very difficult to access. There's a high cost for the transaction. It is bureaucratic. And even the investors, those who say they are risk investors or impact investors looking at the social impact, it's a very long journey for you to be able to get money, right? So I worked 20 years in an NGO, and especially with philanthropic capital. So there's also bureaucracy. It's very difficult to get to the end. And I made this change. I made this change. I made an enterprise, and it's a startup. It's called Pre-SID, to structure and, you know, put the ideas into practice. And it was very, very difficult. And I'm still spending it. It's a lot of suffering. So if you compare in this perspective, the investment structures that you have now in crime versus the investment that we have to promote the bioeconomy, we're losing a lot, right? So maybe you could comment on that, but you know, Vidarchi or Pedro could talk about this. He has this experience with the search for resources, so investing. So what was it like to invest 1 million and to get 1 million and invest 1 million? 1 million seems to be a lot of money, right? But it's nothing, right? When somebody's going to work on, you know, mining, it's, you know, they receive the investment much faster and more than 1 million, right? Sometimes to, you know, to do gold mining. And I want to promote this debate. So Melina, Pedro, Vitarchi, I'd like to hear your comments. Let me start, Marcelo and colleagues. I think we have to work in scales, and everybody has to work within what they can spend less energy with and get more results. So Vitarchi got an infrastructure project of 20 million for the region. He has a lot more capacity than I do in the region. So it's work to be able to unlock some political and bureaucratic issues. In all three countries, out of all three countries, Edici has more capacity than I do. But now to get 5,000 reais and make a boy get 1 million, leave it to me. We're in an incubator and we're in the territory. So I think everybody needs to work according to the scale that they have the capacity for. And over here, Marcelo, what we try to do is called small brains. It's 4,000, 5,000 to formalize somebody. So the first thing was, you know, to have a company opened. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to do it. We're not going to do anything. So there's a girl who is developing repellent based on camu camu, and she's with us. It's a very promising product. So what do? We get 2, 3, 4,000 reais so that she can have the prototype and have the internal capacity of getting better prices. Now, I don't have the capacity in our team to generate a project of 5 million or 10 million, which is for infrastructure, because I'm going to leave my position of being this organizer, because I have a project to attract young people and teach them. So in 3 or 4 years, it's important to believe Vitarchi, Melissa, they will give the step 2 of it. So after they have the structure, after they have 4,000 reais per month instead of in a formal market, and beginning to develop a solution to a local problem, then he will be able to share with other colleagues from other regions the same solution for the climatic problems that we have in the place. So who else knows about the problem? It's the young people looking at this different reality now and seeing the impacts in their territory. And nobody else can develop this solution for this problem. The youth have to do it. And over here, we have to differentiate the investment scale. So the first one is mine. I need to do a lot of work to be able to get 2,000 or 3,000, but we have to guarantee that we're not alone. We have Ediches, we have Vitarchis, we have Melissas, all helping us us in this process, supporting us in this development process for the region. Marcelo, just to answer Pedro's question, I think you're right. And I think we have to look at the dimensions. So when we talk about the problems, we tend to put the problems in the same dimension. I think Pedro said it very well. There are different problems and dimensions and different scales. So when you talk about the formal employment for the youth, this is something that we're going to solve with public policies. But in your case, when we think about bigger areas, when you talk about development of capacity, you're absolutely right. So when we look at the movement of the resources and criminality and illegal work, you don't have to provide all the guarantees because they have different rules, right, to get this guarantee. So effectively, we have to change this logic. And then it's really a set of different players working. So here at the Igarapé Institute, we try to reduce the risk of the territory. Many times the capital doesn't get here because the risk is very big, so it ends up becoming a guarantee that is much more complex. So this is a barrier for the entry. So we have different phases. And if we're able to understand where we are and how we can guarantee the whole ecosystem, I think we can do it. And then the coordination process is extremely important because effectively understanding who the entrepreneurs are. So they come from abroad to generate scale, funding for the Amazon, and being able to make the resource get to the territory. So we have seen this effectively, just like how other players can actually do it. And there is an event that we're going to have where BJ is also part of it. So we also understand the role of the development and how can we work in the pre-competitive or in the competitive area? How can we reduce this in the territory so that we can effectively get to the Amazon that everybody wants to have?
Legal. Obrigado, Melina. Alguém tem mais alguma questão?
Nice. Thank you, Melina. Does anybody else have any questions? Otherwise, I have one. If not, I have one for Egici. Thank you very much. No, it's a complete analysis. Thank you, Melina, Pedro, and Vitarki. Thank you. And obviously, it's great concerns that we have. And always thinking about the solutions, the alternative solutions that we can have. And this is what we're working on. And there's also a reality coming from different perspectives. Safety, young people, as has already been mentioned, or how we can actually move forward in this issue of investment. And maybe we have to think about, maybe we have to do another event to think about these issues of science and technology, as has already been mentioned too, and saying that it's not regions with easy access. So to think about bioeconomy, we have to think about all of this. And that's why I had started the conversation saying that bioeconomy in the Amazon needs to have a specific model. It has to be tailored and with lots of details because it doesn't have the same characteristics, even of the same cities in the Amazon, even other regions of the world. So we have to understand the Amazon that has 70% of its inhabitants in the cities, but there is an Amazon that is rural. And we also need to have models that are adapted to these two different regions that compose the Amazon. So with all of these different realities that we're talking about, so I believe that these alternative and legal alternatives, they are part of this social aspect that exists there. And as I was saying, as Vitarki was saying, there are opportunities for, well, we have 50 million people living in the Amazon, and we don't have any straight roads. We're always going to have sinuous pathways. There's going to be challenges, Latin America in general and in the world, and then more specifically in the Amazon. And once again, I would like to repeat these areas of construction and the fact that we're looking at these support networks. I don't think that any other player is going to be able to get there. I think we have to make a call so that we can collaborate and work together. And through the OTCA, the work that we do with the civil society and all of this, and this implies in indigenous populations, and we also have to institutionalize this, and it is part of the strengthening of the interventions in the territory and in the ecosystem as a single block and not a region. Great. Okay, so we are coming to the final moments of the panel. And I would like to, I'd like to make a final remark, and I would like to ask each of you to send out your final message in the panel, and the conclusion of the forum itself, considering this is the last panel of the forum. So, well, we had fantastic interventions about this topic, looking at the borders and the Pan-Amazon region. It's a great challenge. And I remember the time that I was in ISA. There was a network of the ministry that looked at information about the Pan-Amazon region. And the great challenge at the time, I was telling Beto and Ricardo, Martin, who today is in the general coordination, and other organizations, the first challenge was to create a common base, a database, information and maps to try and have a starting point for the planning of the territory. So we have advanced a lot in this, and we also moved forward in terms of instruments. The innovation ecosystem has also advanced, but I still think we are behind considering what we need for the development of bioeconomy in the Amazon. And something that I have seen as well, and I wanted to bring this as my final comment, whoever is looking at bioeconomy, and we saw most of the debates here in the forum, they're looking at products and services that are palpable, like tourism. And I think this is part of the bioeconomy. And mainly when we look at the communities that are more inside the forest, that are holding the conditions of the forest and generating socio-environmental and conservation work, in fact, it is very difficult to compete in the market. The governance is more expensive, access and maintenance, technical assistance, all of this, all the services are much more expensive. So how can we integrate this economy of products and services, making them more palpable, which are more palpable, with the social environmental aspects, with carbon, biodiversity? So we're contributing to the local settlements, and they have a carbon project that they're developing called a mechanism of sharing benefits. But the head of this carbon project doesn't really talk to bioeconomy. So the debate is, okay, so how much resources are we going to have for the families? How much investment is going to be made to improve healthcare and education and the infrastructure for the families? And the debate of bioeconomy stays in other forums. So I think one of the challenges that we have is to cross these debates a little more with a social environmental work, plus the biodiversity chains, and how one can fund the other. If this debate is done in an integrated manner. I think this is something that I wanted to bring, and it's a challenge, a Pan-Amazonic challenge. Carbon is bringing down the borders. So you have carbon companies that are acting in different countries. There are Colombians that come over here. There's still a lot of confusion in this market. It's a confusion that has exploded. It's a something that has exploded, a lot of negative aspects, but there are many projects that are starting and there are good opportunities too for the communities. So, and also it is, the state is developing its own projects. Okay, so I don't want to say that, okay, the carbon market is a salvation. No, but we have to in some way find scaled mechanisms that value the culture, the socio-environmental services for these communities, the ancestral knowledge, and make this flow, the resources flow to the territories through public policies or directly in the hands of these people. So it's an innovation challenge for the startups. It's to combine these things. So to create this economy, this knowledge, and not only the products and services economy. And I think this has to do with bioeconomy. So this is what I wanted to say as my last comment. And I'd like to ask each one to make their final comments from this panel, or if you want to talk about other panels as well that happened in the forum, please feel free to do so. So 2 minutes each.
Bueno, si nadie se lanza,
Well, if nobody else wants to start, I can start. So I would like to once again thank you and to reinforce what we had said before. We have huge challenges. The Amazon has a young population that is important, and we also have lots of opportunities to work on all this and to work with women. And we basically lose sight of everything that we have to do. And we cannot stop considering the challenges that we have. We cannot allow this to limit us, saying that it's a very high mountain that we cannot climb. No, let's do it slowly. There's a lot to do. There are many people who need this as well. There are many people who can help us. And we have a huge opportunity because we are able to build this slowly, gradually. And we in OTCA are committed to this subject, and Bachik has talked about this. Also here in the Secretariat, we have a huge commitment to build and support our mandate, which is political, diplomatic, and with regional governance. But definitely, we have to trace bridges so that all of this will have a territorial intervention, always considering the regional aspect. And we can look at the interventions from different countries and have a regional impact as a result. So we're going to offer, we are available to reinforce this interest, this commitment, and the doors are still open for this to happen. And we also have several presidents over the next 3 months. And before that, we're going to have the Amazon dialogues, where we're going to compile everything from the different countries. And we're going to compile this information, and there is a very important role in terms of providing what is going to be approved in this topic. And there's an action plan that is stronger and more concrete. So it's not the diagnosis we're talking about action. And in terms of this strategy for the development of the economy, we hope that the presidents can see this and where all of this is going, always thinking about something concrete. It's the moment And I would like to thank you very much and for the invitation. And we have to work together. We have to collaborate. We have to have this political support from the people involved and the authorities of the countries, always strengthening the strategy that we're building together.
Muito obrigado, Edi. Vitark.
Então, eu acho que
So Vitark, go ahead.
tem que ser feito também.
I think it's an effort that has to be done. We have to improve the governance structure of the territories, and we know how this works if we look at something that is working there with certain leaderships, and today where they're transporting, they're getting resources. So there's a difficulty in getting resources, yes. And on the other hand, we can also say that the offer of resources is the problem. It's not the lack of preparation. And we also have the technological aspect that Pedro talked about. And, there's the cost. And if you don't have all that, you can't even have a proposal. Also, the territorial aspect, the universities that are associated to the indigenous population, because today, at this moment, there's a lot of supply of resources. And if you have this intelligence, then the universities become autonomous because the government, the federal government, the state government is going to be limited. So we always have to think about getting to the territory and getting autonomy in that area. So if governance is well structured and there are premises and apart the technological, environmental, and if you have the university working on it, or if something is from the community or the city halls of the cities, and you have 3 countries working, so then we can run autonomously. So this situation, the institutions, it's important for the institutions to have this autonomy so that we don't create a situation where, you do something locally and you want to strengthen so that all of them will have their own momentum, and then we will be able to multiply the territories as well.
Obrigado, Vitark. Pedro.
Thank you, Pedro. Thank you, Marcelo. Thank you for the mediation. Thank you, Edith, Melissa. I was very impressed with what you said, Vitark. I already know he is great, and it's always a pleasure to be with you. It is always good to hear that you still maintain the line of reasoning. There are some points that are important for us to understand. First of all, the GDP of Benjamin Constant is $70 million, 40,000 inhabitants. It's a small city that has $70 million for GDP. It's not a poor city. It just lost its capacity. So everything that we buy here, we have the food for schools, everything that is outside, because we have lost our capacity to leave the territory for those who come. So it's not a lack of resources. I agree with Vitark. It's something that we have to do. We have to prepare the people to administrate the resources they receive. So what we have over here, what we believe in, we have, for example, in Benjamin, in Alto Solimões is 230. We have 330 people who consume. Maybe they don't produce, but they consume. So if it's in the portfolio of our startups, there's a boy that is working with geek culture and video games. Okay, but what does that have to do with bioeconomy and the Amazon culture? It is important because this boy mobilizes 4,000 people in an event, and there are people who consume in this event. And now he's making money from this. So now he's bringing people from outside to sponsor this event in our territory. And these children, they want to participate. They see it on TV and now they can participate. And then you talk about environment, inclusive digital education, and not the rubbish, all the rubbish that we see on the internet. There's another one in Tabatinga. They make rap to denounce the violence that happens in the border. So it's not pirarucu, it's not fish in the can, and it's not an angiroba spray. It's not the solution for bioeconomy, but it's our bioeconomy. And it moves many people, and it attracts and it can attract a lot of investment for the territory. So if I have a rapper that produces music and Bogota listens to it, and it's a city with 8 million inhabitants, I have the capacity of attracting from other people to the territory, and I can make this territory consume the things that are produced in our territory. So I would like to leave a last message of hope, to believe in these young people because they have beautiful solutions. Sometimes they're not conventional for the local problems. Thank you for the opportunity.
Melina, então, ó, o
Great.
último
Melina,
comentário do painel e do
the
fórum.
last comment of the panel and the forum. Up to you now. Okay, I would like to thank and say that after everything that we heard, there's no magic solution. There isn't one solution that is going to address the whole of the Amazon. There are many Amazons, there are many models, a lot of diversity, and we need to change the paradigm many times, the paradigm that is established, because people think there's one solution that will solve all of this diversity that we have talked about. And reinforcing the role of the network. I think the Pan-Amazon network is born. There are the founders of the network, and they have this look of understanding the diversity, being able to connect the different points, and being able to potentialize the differences, and effectively for us to be able to pollinate. So we talked a lot about the Brazilian reality, the economy and development, and we have walked around the other countries, and I'm sure that we're going to find the same wealth, the same diversity in all the population that is in the Amazon. So having greater integration all the time, promoting dialogue, knowledge exchange, lots of things that have been happening, this will definitely lead us to the right path. And Marcelo, you start talking about highs, you want to have a single panorama, and it's very important for us to understand ourselves as a region and create this in the region. So understand ourselves as part of the Amazon in an integrated manner, but also knowing about our peculiarities, our specificities, and understanding that this potentializes everyone. Of course, there are many challenges. In general, I look at the challenges, but I always look at a panel like this and I try to find hope. I have a lot of hope that the solutions have been placed. It is possible. We know the way to solve this as a whole, and definitely this network has a role that is absolutely fundamental of bringing everybody together and promoting the exchange that will potentialize all of these initiatives in the territory. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Maravilha. Bom,
Wonderful.
obrigado. Muito
Well,
obrigado
thank you.
aos meus
Thank you very
colegas
much
panelistas
to
dessa
my
última
colleagues on the
sessão,
panel.
ao
This is
público
the
que
last
nos assiste.
session. And thank you to
Como
the
esse é o último
audience who is
painel do
watching
evento,
us.
né, em
Since
nome
this
da
is the
Rede
last
Incubadora
panel of the event
Amazônia,
on behalf
a
of the Pan
organizadora desse fórum,
Amazonian
em
Network for
especial
Bioeconomy and
todos
the
os
organization of
parceiros
this
que
forum, I'd
apoiaram
like to
essa
thank
organização.
BIJ and all the
Gostaria de agradecer
sponsors
também aos
who
mais de
helped to
65
support this
panelistas que participaram
organization
do evento,
and the more than
né, dos
65
correspondentes da
panelists that
bioeconomia que enviaram
participated in the
vídeos
event and
e, claro,
correspondents of
todos e
bioeconomy who
todas
sent
que
videos,
acompanharam as trocas
and
que a
of
gente
course,
teve nessas 2
everyone who
semanas.
followed these
Então, muito
exchanges
obrigado por
over
toda
these
a
last
equipe de
2 weeks.
produção
So
que está
thank you
aqui
very
nos
much to the
bastidores,
production
né,
who is here in the
produtoras, equipe de
background, who are here in the
interpretação,
background,
vídeo,
the
transmissão,
producers,
ilustradoras,
the
e eu acho
translators,
que
the
um
illustrators,
grande
the
evento.
video
E
makers.
convido a
Wow, it was
todos
a
e
great
todas para
event. And I
conferirem no
invite you
site do
all
evento
to
todos os painéis
check
do
the
fórum que
site of
estiveram
the event.
disponíveis.
You can look at
É
all
isso.
the
Valeu.
panels that will be
Vamos
available.
nessa.
That's it. Thank you, and let's keep going.
Muchas gracias.